The following dispatch is a voice memo from Vice and Chamberlain of the Primrose Garden of the Silver Library of Talking Machines. Purchas Harlakenden.
Addressed to your Excellency beyond the stars, I have been handed down an earmarked order from the Archives Department of the Library of Byzantium to present to you a brief exposition upon the works of the past. One work in particular. I am much honored, but I was rather unfamiliar with the subject matter you requested. Goku? I was much confused by this request. I have a passing familiarity, as I have pursued the catalogs for longer than what my station likely should. The great works of Master Toriyama belong to that long generative period of the legendarium of Middle-earth, the grandiosity of DeMille, and the panoramic grotesquerie that is Losorias. All things in the vein of Stevenson's vibrant novels. Works when humanity was still largely confined to the drab furrows of Earth, but still held an endless desire for adventure. This era was an awakening to time and space. The cosmos rendered in language as a sea to be crossed. I had first presumed such an order was dispatched to me as to deduce the mythological element of the work contained therein. I was mistaken. I quickly learned I was the goat too quick to jump after the fox. I muddled through passages of Wu Cheng'en's A Monkey until I realized my sequencer's error. The logic assistant therein had misinterpreted the ancient characters inputted. I should have been reading a totally different work. Not one mere book, but a series of volumes. I acquired them from the HyperNet archives and was greatly impressed. Like its forebearer, the world and imagery of Dragon Ball expands infinitely. I must admit once again, I am rather poor in my reading of these masterpieces which both directly precede and proceed from the Moonfire era of Earth. I have been distracted by many things ancient even to that era. Despite my poverty in this territory, I can plainly see Dragon Ball delights in the human element and craftsmanship. It is a most pleasing series which engages the comedic and physical. The tools within Dragon Ball, for example, can be equally magic and technology. There is little purpose in distinguishing them. There is no need for a dissertation upon why, because Master Toriyama was confident in the reality of his own work. Space is compressed in capsules, either by advanced technology, inferior to even more advanced technology, or magic, which is also eventually inferior to even more superior magic. As said, the world of Dragon Ball expands infinitely upon itself with no doubt. I have consulted with the talking machines of the archives to bring forth an exposition upon the why the people of the past so enjoyed Dragon Ball. I hope such words bring you strength in your struggle with the Kuiper barbarians. Your honored excellency beyond the stars. Dragon Ball is bursting with mythological element, but unlike the works of Dunsane or Shibusawa, it is filled with it because it never sought to impose itself as an artificial mythology. Though many of the characters bear oddly pedestrian names, fruits, vegetables, and foods abound as of a fairy tale, they are not mere symbols shaking about. There is no bleak moralism awaiting the reader therein, like in Akutagawa's Kappa-land. One is not falling into a fairy realm, for the fairy realm is the real world. All styles of comedy, fantasy, and science fiction evolve together into one unity. One should not disdain Dragon Ball as some simple allegory. Its brashness is wondrous. One may believe the main character, Son Goku, is at first a boy, then he is a monkey, then he is a martial artist, then he is a great hero, then he is a space alien, a Saiyajin, then he is dead, then he is an even greater hero. One never doubts the interval between these phases, because one never doubts that Goku is Goku. Son Goku is doubtless the center of Master Toriyama's Dragon Ball. I at first regrettably mistook a Goku for an epigone of Sun Wukong, but he is much more than a joke upon Sun Wukong's name. The peoples of the past must have adored Goku for his strength and the mythological element he evokes. A wonderful boy with a monkey's tail. As the story unfolds, we find, like Sun Wukong, Goku too is also a product of a sort of stone egg of the heavens. He was sent to Earth as a child in a metal spaceship reminiscent of an egg. Here elements of both Superman and Oedipus enter into the story, though this is a somewhat later revision of Goku's origins. The babe Goku is found by a humble old man who raises the strange child as a son, unaware of his origins. There is no mistake, as Goku's adoptive grandfather's name, Gohan, is a joke upon food or sustenance. He essentially raises Goku as his son, but he is addressed as a grandfather. Goku then bears the family name of Son, representative of grandchild or descendant in its ancient character. He is a descendant of the heaven, later learned to be almost literally true, like his literary ancestor son Wukong. One may say Grandfather Gohan represents the earthly and humble element which begins the knave Goku's maturation, continued by the Turtle Hermit later on. The old man Gohan too turns out to himself have been a great martial artist and even a student of the Turtle Hermit. This enshrines Goku in the human lineage of humble and great fighters. He is raised by an old man in the mountains in a state of knave bliss to eventually save the world. How heroic and wonderful. As Goku grows to maturity through the story, his character begins to call upon Eastern and Western precedents, either openly or obscurely. So here the mystery is literally enlightened. I have concluded that Master Toriyama's Son Goku was so honored because he was a true manifestation of a kind of solar figure. He is both Son Wukong and Mithras, who come from the stone egg. Goku comes from the rock, spaceship, after which he splits his head to awaken his earthly nature and banish the darkness to the depths of his soul, or subconscious. This, though, he will not truly conquer until adulthood. Where, though, is the ox that emerges with Goku if he is alike to Mithras? As he comes to his height, Goku marries the daughter of an Ox King. His name and role, like many in Toriyama's work, a joke upon the bold Demon King from Wu Cheng'en's novels. Then, Goku is forced to kill his own adult brother Raditz, another evil epigone, as he too arrives upon Earth in a similar pod reminiscent of a stone when Goku arrives with his son. Goku's name may too be read as Understanding the Sky, a joke upon Son Wukong's name. Goku's growing is associated with a style of solar rising. He begins as a sort of wild boy, akin to a skillful Mowgli, dressed in sky blue fatigues who exists without knowledge of greater society, and almost woman, until he meets his female equivalent in the supremely civilized Bulma, a character as equally as fascinating as Goku, with a mastery over technology. She, though, will be talked about another time. This, I must focus on Goku. Goku's boy blue fatigues are replaced by an orange uniform, gi, once Goku undergoes formal training with the Turtle Hermit. The open quest of the sky is soon overtaken by the purpose of the sun. It is as if from this point, Goku is always training by gaining knowledge of the world. He meets an array of masters, sages, and fiends, who allow him to transcend each rung of existence. The world in Dragon Ball is endlessly unfolding like an ancient Chinese landscape painting. Goku becomes a sun runner as the earth becomes his ward. He learns first to traverse the sky with tools, a mythological pole and cloud of Chinese and Greek precedent. Then to scale the sky by natural flight, as if a bird. Then he learns to move through physical space by teleportation. One may compare this sort of unconscious transmigration to moving through both a physical and philosophical emptiness. Once again, a truth in Goku's name, Understanding the Sky. As in any mythological diction, Goku's enemy is the moon, and he, as a character, is always associated with dragons in his quest. The moon inflames in young Goku his alien monkey nature. This mythological Jekyll and Hyde in Goku reminds the reader that the heavens are not always kind, nor strength useful when untamed. It is this subconscious inclination that eventually brings about the death of Goku's kindly adoptive grandfather. This happens technically before the story begins, but it is understood later. Goku's quest then puts him, and those he draws in with his endless energy, in pursuit of the Dragon Balls, either to use them or defend them. The Dragon Balls are the work of God which can grant any wish, but there are an endless multitude of gods in Dragon Ball, not all kind or beneficial. 7 balls that, once gathered, can summon the eternal dragon Shenlong to grant any wish. Their power is an equivalent to the Sampo of Finnish legend, or a bottled gin of Arabic legend, though much mightier than both. Outside brief moments, Shenlong remains the most undiluted, godly figure in Dragon Ball. The dragon Shenlong is more a force of nature than embodiment or personification, as the other gods of the world are. This is from where Dragon Ball comes. In certain apocrypha, and there is much apocrypha, Goku is often even synonymous with dragons or the eternal Shenlong. Goku is neither ultimately innocent or endlessly patient, but he is pure of heart and purpose. It is noticeable how he befriends nearly all his former antagonists and enemies on his journey. Monsters, bandits, and other martial artists all become friends of Goku, even at one point dinosaurs. I at first mistook Dragon Ball for representing a kind of warrior culture, but warfare is not truly set apart in Dragon Ball. Battle in Dragon Ball is simply another art that can be practiced for good or evil. Power is respected as a natural force, as it was in the ancient East, but a belief in power alone is often ruinous for those villains that believe in it absolutely. Goku's enemies become companions by the persuasion of Goku's power or sincerity. He gains endless power and techniques from the informal Kamitatis that sheds blood with him. He learns the Sun Fist, or Solar Flare, from his wonderful cavalcade of companions. His friends Bulma, Krillin, Yamcha, Tien Shinhan, and Chaozu clearly evoke their literary precedents of Sayuki, but still evolve into unique characters in this world. Goku gains the Kamehameha, or Kamehameha, from the deceivingly and ineffably amusing Turtle Hermit, Muten Roshi, which associates Goku with both turtles, representative of the sea, and peace. The name Kamehameha means in an ancient Pacific tongue, one set apart for a purpose. The name of an ancient king whose code of peace, the law of the splinter paddle, promoted the safety of children, women, the elderly, and certain innocents in battle. This, in a way, is the philosophy of Muten Roshi's school of martial arts, which becomes the way of Goku and his companions. Their clothes often bear his symbol. The Kamehameha wave soon becomes a technique as synonymous with Goku as his very name. Goku too fetches the ultimate Genki Dama technique from the spirit world. He seems to move between the world of the living and the dead very freely. This he learns from one of the many deities that populate the world of Dragon Ball. This god Goku befriends too. The world of the living and the dead are not so distant or divided in Dragon Ball. The Genki Dama sphere is a sort of reverse parallel to the sun. The Genki Dama sphere draws power from all living things to create a sort of death-giving second sun, as opposed to the life-giving primary sun. Once again, intended or not, Goku appears to allude to the sun. Solar symbolism. Goku's enemies universally represent an overwhelming threat to either the Earth or the greater cosmos at large. Each is a prospective Ragnarok. The villains of Dragon Ball are dominated by greed and untamed desires for immortality or victory, which only the Dragon Balls can slake, though not all desire the Dragon Balls. The height of this, though, is the Daimao Piccolo, a devilish figure, almost an opposite to the childish Goku, who desires youth from the Dragon Balls. Immortality a common wish for villains, as opposed to the usually selfless desires of the heroes, who desire only to raise their friends from the dead with a single wish. This Demon King represents the apotheosis of greed, as opposed to his Spartan counterpart Kami, a sort of absentee god of good and creator of the Dragon Balls. This duo perhaps a Taoistic rendition of the mythological Jade Emperor, as Kami's heavenly palace holds a mystical room where time moves at a year's pace in a single day. Then there are the alien, though humanoid Saiyajins, who are the war thralls of the diabolical overlord Frieza. Frieza and his nameless hybrid race represent a threat of darkness birthed from the bowels of space. Eternal Frost, represented in the form of alien demons. Their names associated with cold: Frieza, King Cold, and Cooler. Frieza, a leader of a great group of vile aliens, may be considered a representation of endless winter in the mythological element which exists throughout Dragon Ball. Frieza's place is succeeded by the pseudo-artificial androids and the biological insectoid Cell. All were created by the technology of Dr. Gero to destroy Goku as revenge for his heroic exploits in youth. Their existence the classic struggle of human artifice versus natural power. Cell is an artificial, though charming creature designed at the genetic level to be the ultimate warrior, but it is his vanity and his nature that destroys him. He cannot overcome Goku or Goku's friends. Others, such as Majin Buu, represent a greater surfacing of primordial chaos and its immense power. Buu's name itself a representation for evil. All incarnations of Buu, and he has many forms, are childish as opposed to prior villains. They have goals little more than fulfilling base desires until introduced to mortal innocence. Dragon Ball is dominated by the cycle of a falling and rising again to overcome. One must doubt to believe they can win again. The two most psychologically fascinating figures of this are Piccolo and Vegeta, both former villains who eventually fall into Goku's orbit. It seems many followers of Toriyama adored these two figures in the golden age of Dragon Ball. Piccolo, for example, begins as the spawn and pseudo-reincarnation of his parent, the Demon King. His character evolution a later parallel to that of Goku, a vile child who awakens to his alien nature. He, Piccolo, is a Namekian or a Namek. His evil nature is slowly softened by interactions with goodwill and confrontations with greater evil. Or, as the width of the world and universe changes within Dragon Ball, the idea of Piccolo's character changes with it, from a fiend or demon to a humanized alien. The incarnations of Piccolo, both Demon King and Child, seem to invoke the vegetal and primordial waters. His flesh is green, big green, he need only water to survive, and his race is like that of sexless plants. The lifespans of the Daimao Piccolo and Kami appear, though not immortal, to be prodigious in length. This suggests a more primordial, though not inferior evolutionary state, as opposed to humans and the humanoid Saiyans. Thus, once he is swayed to Goku's friendship by respect, Piccolo represents a cooler, more settled element to complement the fiery nature of Goku, very necessary as the sagas progress, and Goku flares up and down like a candle, as again he represents a solar figure, as opposed to Piccolo, who represents the steady waters. Vegeta too at first appears as a celestial counterpart, or even doppelganger to the earthly Goku when he arrives to Earth. Goku is an amnesiac, largely ignorant to his nature. Vegeta places his pride in his Saiyajin, alien Saiyan heritage. Goku is a low-class bumpkin at freedom. Vegeta is a fallen prince. Goku is supremely humble. Vegeta is supremely prideful. Vegeta truly introduces the otherworldly, the world beyond the Earth in Dragon Ball. Vegeta's attacks bear far more grandiose cosmic names than Goku's: Garlic Cannon, Final Flash, Big Bang Attack. Calling one of the pair the civilized and the other the uncivilized is an extreme simplification, but there is a truth to that parallel. Their great rivalry is the undying element of Dragon Ball, from their first meeting in the second section of the triptych that is Dragon Ball. Only in spurious sources are they said to annihilate each other at the unwritten end of the myth. It is this rivalry that changes both. Vegeta is softened to his mortal nature due to Goku's pure heart, and Goku's mind is fully awoken to his potential due to Vegeta's antagonism and goading. It takes the celestial catalyst of Vegeta, knowledge, and Frieza, conflict, for Goku to achieve the legendary pseudo-solar form of Super Saiyan, golden hair, luminescence, and overwhelming power, the Sun incarnate. Both achieve the perfected state of Super Saiyan due to the goading of the other. Super Saiyan, like the Dragon Balls, is a concept synonymous with the tapestry of Dragon Ball. Its meaning is so polysemous and rich as being impossible to describe in full detail. The transformation represents a reaching towards a legendary ideal of a Super Saiyan, a legendary warrior beyond space, myth, and time. Super Saiyan, as most things in Dragon Ball, represents a state of ever-increasing perfection. One moves towards the goal, yet it seems impossible to ever truly arrive or achieve that goal. It is the controlled parallel to the violent, wild nature of the original Saiyajin transformation, the ape. Super Saiyan is a rising above of that nature, often through inflamed emotions, to reach a state more towards heaven than wild nature. Eventually, in some sources, the transformation becomes a cultivation towards godhood, as ancients once understood martial arts would provide. One is cultivating themselves towards the heavens. Other apocrypha, and we will come to that, argues Goku becomes not more godlike as he ascends the rungs of power, but again becomes more monkey-like, as if alluding back to the ape origins of the Saiyajins. He becomes less like a platonic god, or warrior Buddha of the heavens, and again like Sun Wukong, not like a Greek piece of statuary. It is interesting to note that Vegeta never fully achieves the more earthly, apish stage of Super Saiyan 3, but in some sources, such as the later GT, he achieves Super Saiyan 4 with the help of technology and the moon, a reference to his more pronounced Saiyajin alien origins. Transformation exists throughout Dragon Ball as a recurrent theme. All these things may be glanced in Dragon Ball, the first segment of the triptych, and Dragon Ball Z, the second segment of the triptych, both composing their own mythic cycles. I have time here to scarcely cover a fraction of what I desire to. What is supposed to compose the third segment of the triptych, though, is somewhat of a puzzle to me, unfortunately. Two contenders are set apart from smaller works, GT and Super. There were once certain sects which long contended which sequence was more legitimate. In its day, Dragon Ball was a great generator of argument and banter between readers, the adherents and followers of Toriyama's school. The adherents of GT claimed an earlier creation date as an argument for legitimacy, and that they were correct. Several motifs from GT exist highly altered in Super, though they are obviously taken from GT. As the years and arguments continued though, the adherents of GT seem to have dwindled in favor of Super, though it never completely vanished. The adherents of Super claim a greater authorial involvement of Master Toriyama's ideas, and a larger span of scope. There does exist in Super 2 a seed of an earlier, no longer extant arc, or a sort of sequence I desire to talk about here, called AF. Its existence is somewhat confusing. I, though, have been much confused in my study by references to that certain apocrypha by the name of Dragon Ball AF. This AF is distinct from those other works of GT and Super, and the larger pieces of apocrypha. Yet, in both cases of AF and GT, I can find no explanation for what these frustrating runes mean. I cannot tell if this AF was simply an imposter work wiped from the records, like those works of Eurodoro Acevedo, or was a mere fantasy to begin with. This has led me to theorize the tales of Son Goku were so beloved by the many of Master Toriyama's time that many sagas were added on by later anonymous authors. In the archives, I have found scattered reference to an odd to Toriyama's theory that I take as support for my own beliefs in this subject matter. These scattered notes make references to a murky figure called the Zykor, who, I believe, is an imposition of a kind of underworld Zagreus figure upon the mythwork of Dragon Ball, his creation of divine heritage, and a scion of Goku's blood. His role, though, more akin to that of Mordred of Arthurian lore, as he casts the death strokes of the final apocalypse of Dragon Ball. This Zykor, then, was likely a peripheral figure conjured by those infatuated with Master Toriyama's tales. He was a far inferior figure to others such as Frieza and Broly, who already fulfilled such a distinct role. Broly himself a folkloric character from the Apocrypha, who was eventually integrated through a rendition in Super. Thus, this Zykor figure was never fully adopted, but appeared again and again in other apocryphal works under multiple guises and names, such as Cumber. We may think of him as a sort of Shadowcat-like figure, as the Mexico once worshipped. Many faces for one guise. I myself have often become confused which material beyond Master Toriyama's direct work is to be taken as proof within the cycle of Dragon Ball. Though these groups had no name, there were an endless multitude who enjoyed arguing over the legitimacy of every cycle and notice. The truth of what is now lost in the labyrinth of history. Dragon Ball retains a panoramic and psychological vastness, which begot great dedication. Even after decades, even after millennium, it retains this. And, I believe, as long as humanity exists, there will always be one who finds a fondness and kinship in Son Goku. One must always leave their audience happy. In haste and regards, ESCRIBE, Purchas Harlakenden.
Following this dispatch, and the voice memo contained therein, it is reported that Harlakenden's report was received with amusement in the Moonflower chambers of high government. He became highly regarded as the Mr. Mandeville of volumes by attendants of the lunar government. ESCRIBE, with regards, supporters, Vilanon, and an anonymous patron.